I'm back with the fisheye lens, but that is not what is important because we are approaching the end of the month, which means it's paycheck time. I mean, I don't know like when people's paychecks are released, but most people it will be either the last working day of the month or at least like the last working week of the month. And it's crazy out there with the money, and one of the things that I know a lot of people will be looking into in 2025, but especially because it's a new year, is people will be trying to decipher how they spent their money in 2024 and how they're going to spend it now and how they're going to save. It's crazy out there. It's so hard. In my office, there's always many little scuffles between some of the older generation and some of the younger generation, because the older generation are like, the younger generation don't know how to look after their money, and then the younger generation are like, yeah, but you were able to like buy like a 3-bedroom house for like £20,000, which is completely unheard of now. So I just wanted to make it a little bit easier because I've been doing a lot of research over an extended amount of time. I'll probably go over that another time, but I just wanted to give like a condensed place with all the research so you don't have to like look everywhere. Obviously you still need to research more than this, but I just wanted to give it in a simplified way for like the normal person, because otherwise it can get very confusing. And I think this is a good place to start. It's a good benchmark of where you can begin, and then obviously you can start your research based on this. And obviously this is not financial advice because I have no qualifications to be giving you financial advice, except for the fact that I'm living this life as well, and it's hard out there. It is hard out there. Okay, let's do this. I have shifted over a little bit just in case I want to put anything over here, and I know the fisheye lens makes everything look crazy, but it's okay. That is okay. But first, I think the first step that you can do is, what are we doing with our paycheck when it arrives into our bank account on that very holy day that is payday? What are we going to do? And this is what you're going to do. This is kind of what I do. I could probably be better about it, but this is what you should do. So I'm going to divide this into 3 categories. That's 6 fingers. 3 categories of what you should be doing. The 3 categories are essentials, saving and investments, and then fun and flexibility. So 50 to 60% of your paycheck should automatically be put aside, potentially moving it completely into a different account. If you have another account, you can always open one, and that will be for rent, mortgage, utilities, groceries, transport, basically the things that you need to pay for. Like, there's no like if or buts about it. And that's about 50-60%. The second is saving and investments. So I would say that if you're able to, you need to what they call pay yourself first, and that's around 20 to 30% of your paycheck, which will go into a saving account, an ISA, or some other type of investment. We'll get into that later. And then the third one is fun and flexibility, because we need balance. So you're going to save 10 to 20% depending on how you're balancing everything out for things like entertaining. Well, yes, I guess you could entertain people. Entertainment, dining out, hobbies, la la la. So it's stuff that's not essential, but you kind of need it for your own peace of mind. And that is what you're going to do to your paycheck. And the best thing to do is to automate this so that you don't get tempted to overspend. So if you get paid into one account, immediately have like direct debit set up to go to other places. So have a direct debit set up for like to send stuff to your essential account, so that you know that you won't spend any money, or like essential money that you need to pay for other things, and set up another direct debit to move your savings fund somewhere else, and then maybe keep that as your fun and flexibility account, so then you know, or have a fun and flexibility account. Some banks will even let you categorize money into sub accounts in their own banking apps. You'll have to look into that though. The next thing is budgeting. So budgeting is kind of scary. Nobody wants to do it, but you have to do it if you have a specific savings goal in mind, or even if it's just to make sure that you're not overspending on things that you don't need to overspend on. And most people use the 50-30-20 rule as a baseline, but you might have to tweak that depending on where you live, your like current circumstances. So the most important thing is to track your income and expenses monthly. You can use apps. So I know there's apps like Emma or Monzo that you can use, and it helps you even categorize your spending, so it knows if you're spending on like bills and utilities versus spending on like shopping and stuff like that. Or you can do it yourself on places like Notion, Excel, Google Sheets, however you want to do it. But just try out some apps, I guess, or I mean, they are third party, so read the terms and conditions. But just the whole point is have your budgeting in mind so that you know, like, okay, so I need this much money for this much money for this. It kind of links back to the first thing when you're already partially doing that when you're automating your accounts and sending money to other places. But yeah, try apps like Monzo, Emma, Yolt, Money Dashboard, whatever. Same as the budgeting thing, make sure you track your spending so that you know what you're spending, because then you can curb your spending on things that aren't important, or if you're overspending on something because you're tracking it. So you might find that in January maybe you buy a coffee every single day, and then you realize I don't really need to buy a coffee every single day. Maybe I could buy a coffee every other day, or I could make coffee sometimes like from home so that it's not as expensive. Of course, if your sanity is buying a coffee, then buy a coffee, but you know what I mean, like if you're able to, then you can see, and then maybe you see that in January, so then in February you're like, okay, let me tone it down a bit, and then you realise that you go from spending £5 on a coffee every single day of the week, so that's 5 times 30, which is £150, and then you go down to only spending £100, and that's £50 that you've saved. Not doing that, you can either put that into a savings account or into some type of investment portfolio if you're interested in doing that. The next point is what I think that most people are interested in, and it's also how I sort of went down this whole rabbit hole of like how to sort out my paycheck, because initially I was just looking at how to get into investing. I'm 27 now, so I've kind of been doing it for a little bit, but I kind of wish I'd started sooner. I mean, I didn't start when I was 27, I started a little while back, but if I'd started even sooner, I would have been in an even better position. So that whole thing about like don't start when it's too late, like every year because of inflation the value of your money goes down, so you need to offset that with savings account, investments, and there's multiple ways that you can do investing, and investing can be intimidating, but here's some strategies that I've picked up. So one is real estate, so you can save for a deposit, and that saving for a deposit is also a long-term goal, but there's other things out there like shared ownership schemes. A lot of high-rise towers and stuff are doing that, where the building is owned by a company and then they're doing shared ownership. And there's also things like first-time buyer ISAs, research into that. More crucially for me is stocks and shares and ETFs. So it's about investing small amounts, and you can use apps like Free Trade, Vanguard, eToro, all stuff like that. And if you don't know what ETFs are kind of like index funds, and it's a way to diversify your money with a slightly lower risk. I don't know, I don't want to say that and then it's like not completely accurate, but essentially it's like instead of buying £100 worth of stocks in Apple, for example, your £100 that you give will be distributed amongst however many companies are part of the index fund, and then that way, let's say that Apple has a really bad year, then their stock's price might go down, but that means your whole £100 price value will go down. Whereas if you'd spent £100 on an ETF, you would have a decrease in value, but it wouldn't be as significant as if you'd just put £100 to one stock. Instead, you're distributing it amongst a lot of stocks. I think that makes sense. I don't really know. And another thing is to soak up some knowledge, watch some YouTube videos, listen to some podcasts. I know, is it Trading 212? Trading 212 has this demo feature where you can literally copy somebody else's like investing strategy, and so you go on the demo, it's not using real money, so you can test it out, see how you feel about it, and then when you're ready to invest, if you want to, you can either do it yourself or you can copy someone else's portfolio. So if you see someone whose investing style matches what you're trying to achieve, you just go ahead and copy their portfolio. With risks, just saying. A lot of the investing videos I've seen are American based, so they're talking about the Roth IRA and the 401k, but we don't have that in England. But that's why I wanted to create this video, is to put all the information for UK people, especially people in their 20s, in one place. And so you need to use an ISA basically. If you're not offsetting inflation. So you can have cash ISAs, which is really good for emergency savings. There's a lot of discourse around having a 6-month emergency fund, a 12-month emergency fund, something like that, so that if anything goes wrong, you can take money from that fund. If you're unemployed for whatever reason, or if you're having extreme hardship, at least you have an emergency fund somewhere. So that's another thing to consider. The way you calculate your emergency fund is the very first step. We talked about essentials, savings and fun, just the essentials category, and then multiply that by however many months of an emergency fund you'd like. So for example, if your monthly essentials expenses are £1,000, for example, which include rent, bills, groceries, so it's just enough for you to just live and get by, then you need to do £1,000 times 6, so you need £6,000 for your emergency fund. Again, another thing is to get a stocks and shares ISA, which is good for long-term growth, and then you can invest in places. And then there's also things in the UK called the lifetime ISA, where if you're planning on buying like a home, or there's like a couple other categories, the government will give you 25% bonus for like every year you keep it in there, or something like that. So research that one. There are conditions to using it afterwards, but just have a look. Savings account, I would just honestly, anytime I'm having any sort of financial like second wind, I go and look at the Martin Lewis money saving expert, and his team have like little blogs all the time about like what you should do. So if you're interested in getting a savings account that's looking at high interest, go on there. But I know that currently some of the ones that are on there are like Moneybox, Chase, Santander, ones like that. So have a look on there. They update it pretty regularly. I think a lot of people look at it, so you can see not just savings account, but I don't think he does too much of like the stock side. I look at Motley Fool for that sometimes, but he talks about just like switching bank accounts, which bank account was like probably the best for you and stuff like that. I mentioned some apps earlier like Monzo and Emma, but other apps include Plum and Moneybox, and I think there's another one that I heard about recently. Snoop is supposed to be good, so get some apps, see which one's interface you like the best, or do it yourself manually. Manually can be a little bit more time consuming, but it can be quite rewarding, and because you're doing it, you kind of see how much you're actually spending on like a specific thing, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. That's what I was doing in 2024. This year I'm kind of transitioning more towards the not really using my own spreadsheet, but trying to use an app, because it is very time consuming to do it. I was doing it like a month, a couple times a month, once a month, a couple times a month, but whatever works for you. So again, this is not financial advice, but this is kind of my plan for 2025, is staying consistent, automating where I can, learning new things all the time, tracking I think is probably the most important thing, and I really want 2025 to be the year where I implement some good habits in terms of personal finance. I started it in 2024, but need to continue it now, especially like if you want to go on, like I know many of the videos that I'm posting are about like creating good memories, and sometimes creating a memory requires some money, like if I'm going on like a long trip or whatever, which I kind of have planned this year. So I need to do that savings so that I can, do those things later. And of course everybody's situations are different. So for example, some people will have lower expenses, like if they share rent or mortgage, or if they live with their family, or some people might have higher if they, depending on like what city you live in, or you know, like what kind of accommodation you live in. So if you really are struggling, then maybe we need to review what's essential and try and decide like, do I really need to be spending £150 a week on my groceries? Probably not. You could probably find a cheaper alternative. Or, you know, like, is this phone plan the one for me, where I'm having to pay like £50 a month when there's one slightly less data or whatever? Most of the time we're connected to Wi-Fi anyway, so maybe you could get one that doesn't have 50 gigabyte of data and instead has like 20 gigabytes of data, which is about, I don't know the prices, but like is cheaper, and that might be more helpful. Anyway, I kind of went off on tangent. I think I might make a video on like my investing plans, or what I've learned about investing, because it's pretty scary when you first do it, but then when you get into it, it gets better. But I think the important thing to remember about investing is the long-term aspect of it, not the buy the, like, you don't like buy the stocks and sink the stocks, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's a whole separate thing. So hopefully this little video was a good combination of what you need to know to like get the basics going, get those cogs turning up there, and especially in time for payday, what you need to do. Because some videos out there are real confusing. And also do your research, because things other people say might not be accurate, or it might have been accurate at the time of posting but not now. So take everything you see with a grain of salt. So when you see something, with a pinch of salt, grain of salt, whatever, and when you see something, go and check it, verify the facts, then decide what you're going to do moving forward. Okay. Intellectualness is now shutting down.